Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Allie, and unfortunately, I don't know what has happened in the past like 3 hours. All of a sudden, my nose has gotten stuffy and my throat has started to hurt. So you are in for a treat today, ladies and gentlemen. But today we are going to be discussing one of my favorite, I shouldn't call it favorite, that's like weird, but one of the most interesting cases in my opinion, and that is the mysterious disappearance of Maura Murray. This light is so fucking bright. Like I honestly like that better, and I feel like it's too dark, but like, oh my god. This isn't a makeup video. I feel like it's okay if things aren't perfect, you know? Yeah, we're gonna talk about the mysterious disappearance of Maura Murray. I have a script. I'm like very professional today. I'm really trying not to look at the camera, but I can see the comments already. Oh my god, she wouldn't stop looking at her paper. Okay, you know, I can't win. So we'll just get that out of the way really quick. But just some housekeeping things. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you like this video, and once it's done, I really want to hear your theories. I really do. I'm not just joking around. Like, I really want to know. I'm going to be better about being in the comments because I feel like I'm never in the comments, but I want to hear y'all's theories. So I'm going to make this really short, but I also want to mention that I got a lot of my information from the usual suspects, Wikipedia, and news articles. However, I used the Missing Maura Murray podcast extensively. So I'm going to link all of my resources down below per usual, but just keep in mind that I got a lot of information from there, and they debunked a lot of stuff that was already on the Wikipedia page. So I kind of use Wikipedia as like a baseline, and then I try to use other sources to substantiate what people were saying. So that's it. Now, no, it's not. I also want to mention that a lot of people have some pretty intense feelings about the Maura Murray case. And because of that, I'm going to try to keep the information that I'm presenting to you as unbiased as possible. And I'm going to talk about theories. I'm going to talk about what I believe happened. However, just keep in mind that a lot of people have a lot of feelings about what happened to Maura, and that has convoluted a lot of the information that is out there. I am going to try not to be guided by emotion. I'm going to try to be guided by the facts and present you guys the facts in the best way possible. So let's get started. Maura Murray was born on May 4th in 1982. I get it wrong every time. 1982. She was born to a pretty middle class family. She had 4 siblings and obviously mother and father. And she disappeared on February 9th in 2004 at the age of 21. She disappeared in New Hampshire while driving along Route 112. She got into a car accident sometime after 7 p.m. It's not exactly clear the exact moment of her accident, but at about 7:27, after hearing, oh my god, are you kidding? After hearing a loud thump outside, a neighbor on that road called the police. A school bus driver who was returning home from work also spotted Maura. He spotted Maura. She was cold. She was shivering. She looked a little bit shaken up. Naturally so. She had just been, you know, in a car accident. And so he stopped. He talked to her. He was like, hey, I'm going to go home and call the police. And she was like, please, please don't call the police. I've already called AAA. Everything's fine. I don't need any help. And he knew that not to be true. There was no cell phone service out there. So he went ahead, drove home, and called the police anyway. His call, according to call logs, was received at 7:43, but an eyewitness account states that there was already a policeman there at 7:37. That's something interesting to note. And there's no record that there was a policeman there at 7:37, but an eyewitness account says that there was. While it may seem like I'm getting in the weeds with this timeline thing, it's really important because Maura went missing sometime between 7:27 and about 7:46. So within 20 minutes, she went from getting into this car accident and vanishing off the face of the earth. So this timeline, while it may seem a little bit, you know, specific, it's because it has to be. That's a very short amount of time to go from being okay to being completely disappeared. Officially, the police arrived on the scene at 7:46. This was the Haverhill Police Department. It was the closest town from, where this accident was located. The car was impacted on the driver's side. All of the airbags were deployed. The car was totaled. It had irreparable damage. Something about the fan going into the radiator. I don't know what that means. I'm not a car gal, but it was very, very bad. The windshield was cracked, but there wasn't any evidence that Maura had hit her head. The bus driver says he did not see any blood on her. She didn't seem disoriented. She just seemed like she had just gone into a car accident. There is reason to speculate that he could have been wrong, but at this point, he says that there was no sign of like a head wound or anything like that. The most alarming thing that was found in the car was there was a big, one of those box wine things, the Franzia wines. It had blown up in the car, and there was also empty beer cans and empty beer bottles in the back seat. There were a lot of things that were in the car that I'm not going to mention just because I don't feel like they're pertinent to the case. Some things to note that were in the car: some blank accident report forms, books, specifically a book about rock climbing the White Mountains in Vermont. Some of her favorite stuffed animals are ones that were identified as her favorites. Driving directions to Burlington, Vermont. And some of the things that were missing, not left behind, they were not there. Credit cards and debit card and her cell phone were all gone. Reports claim that 10 minutes from when the bus driver found her to when the police arrived, she was already gone. However, that timeline to me is just suspect because of the eyewitness account that there was a police officer there at 7:37. There's only been one possible sighting of Maura since she went missing, and that was that night. At about 8, somewhere between 8 and 8:30, a contractor was driving home when he saw a person walking briskly on Route 112, wearing a hoodie, jeans, hood up. And the man didn't report it right away because he saw it. He didn't really think anything about it. And then when he started hearing stuff about Maura, he went back and checked his work log only to discover that he saw that person that night that she had gone missing. Now, he found her 6 to 8 miles from the crash site. Now, you're probably thinking, excuse me, that is, that's a long way away. There's two different options for this. One of them is that there was woods in the area. So when they're talking 6 to 8 miles, normally they're talking driving distance, right? Well, it is possible that she didn't take the road. She could have run through the woods. She was also a runner. So it's possible that even though, if we're on the lower end of things, 6 miles, it's not impossible that that she had maybe ran to that destination and was spotted. The last responding officer left the scene at around 9:30, and police did drive around looking for Maura. They actually drove around with the bus driver, which a lot of people have criticized, but here's the thing. Those police officers wouldn't have known who they were looking for. They had to have someone that could identify Maura, so I don't find it odd that they brought the police officer with them. Upon further investigation of the area, there was no sign of her. She had simply vanished. They didn't report her as missing until 12 p.m. the next day. And once she was classified as a missing person, people responded pretty quickly, like the police did, the media and all that stuff. But it wasn't until 12 p.m. the next day that she was technically classified as a missing person. They attempted to contact Fred at about 3:20 p.m. But he didn't receive the news until after 5 because he wasn't home when he got the phone call. So his other daughter had to contact him to let him know that Maura was missing. He immediately contacted the Haverhill Police Department trying to figure out what was going on, and they told him that the next morning at 8 a.m. the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department would be conducting a search. So that was on February 11th. So she went missing on February 9th. They began the search on February 11th. The search party was slated to start at 8 a.m. Fred was there. He was ready to go. They used the scent of Maura's gloves that were left in the car, and they had a police tracking dog. The dog was able to track it 100 yards away from where the car was located. I have no idea how long I haven't been filming. That is why I get so many comments about not looking that way, that I look off screen a lot. It's because my camera doesn't click or anything when my auto, when it goes off. Like, I don't have a light on, nothing happens, so it just goes off. So I have no idea how long I haven't been recording. I have to watch the footage. Hold on, hold please. All right, I'm not gonna go watch 12 minutes of footage to figure out where we left off, okay? So I believe that I was saying that Fred arrived on February 11th ready to start a search party. The search party started at 8 a.m. It was led by the Fish and Game Department. Bill Rausch arrived at 5 p.m. I also mentioned that the tracking dogs that they had with them were unable to detect any more scent 100 yards from where Maura's car was found. So this made police believe that it's possible that she had come into the mountains to either commit suicide or run away. Bill Rausch was interrogated for about 2 hours.
Okay, very quickly, editing alley here. I never got to mention because my camera cut off, but Bill Rausch was Maura Murray's boyfriend. We will talk in depthly about him later, but he's Bill Rausch. He's the one that arrived at 5 p.m. Okay, thanks for that.
Alone and with his parents, and he revealed that he had gotten a voicemail from someone that he believed was Maura while he was in the air, and the voicemail was just the sounds of someone crying, and this voicemail was linked back to a calling card from the Red Cross. So Bill and Fred, this sounds like the Flintstones. Bill and Fred had held a press conference. This works me up about the whole camera thing. Like, I'm gonna be looking over there now because I am so scared that it's gonna turn off. But they held a press conference, and the police said that they believed that Maura was a danger to herself. They didn't think that she was a danger to anyone else. She had also been drinking, or they alleged that it was possible that she had been drinking. Something else, I just remembered this. Something else I wanted to mention, when they found her car, whenever the police got to the scene, something that I found odd, aside from everything in the car, was that the car was locked. Like, she remembered before she went away to lock her car, and I did find that incredibly interesting. Anyway, so even though they theorized that she was drunk because of the Franzia bottle that had like blown up everywhere, there was red wine everywhere, the bus driver disagrees, and to this day he will say that he does not believe Maura was drunk, that she was not acting impaired at all. She seemed very cognitive. It's just that she seemed like she was upset. She had just gotten into a car accident. She was acting like anyone else would getting into a car accident. So, I mean, to this day he's never faltered on that. He has always said that he believes that Maura was not drinking. So a whole entire week went by after Maura had gone missing before Vermont was notified that there was a missing person. Fred was pissed because she had directions to Burlington, Vermont. Why were the Vermont police not notified beforehand? I do not know, but they put out an alert for her. The FBI was also dispatched. I don't know under what circumstances. I don't know who called them, but I do find it interesting that the police were so certain that she had went into the mountains to kill herself, and yet they contacted the FBI, or someone contacted the FBI. But nonetheless, the FBI got involved, and it was around this time that a second air and ground search was conducted, and this time they used thermal imaging. Now, the problem with thermal imaging is that if Maura had already passed away, they wouldn't have been able to detect her body. She, within a couple of hours, body loses enough heat that they are not detected through thermal imaging. So they did not find anything. And in fact, I'm not going to go super in depth about searches from here on out. There's only a couple that I am going to mention. Because even though Fred went out almost every single weekend in order to search, there was never anything found. Nothing. Now, Fred was criticized for his searching. Fred was criticized for a lot. And one of the reasons he was criticized was because people were complaining that he was going onto private property. My issue with this is in that area, it's not always clear what's private property and what's public property. So he may not have even realized he was on private property, but that's just my opinion. So in March, Brianna Maitland also went missing in Vermont under very similar circumstances. A lot of people lump those two cases together. I will not be. I feel like they are not connected. And a lot of people felt like it was possible that a serial killer had gotten to both Maura and Brianna. But I'm going to talk about why I don't think that that's the case. You know, you can debunk me, it's fine. But I'm just not going to also talk about Brianna. If I'm going to talk about Brianna, she's going to get her own video. So let me know if you're interested in knowing more about Brianna Maitland. She was another girl that went missing under very similar circumstances, but I'm not going to be talking about her today. Now, something important that came from the disappearance of Maura Murray is the rise in online sleuthing. Now, this was kind of cool because it created a community of people who were interested in the Maura Murray case. And we know now that one of the most important things with cases like this is exposure. That's why a lot of people do these videos. It's not just because they enjoy talking about it. It can gain exposure for cases that have gone, you know, a long time without anyone hearing about them. And you never know who's going to share the video. You never know if the right people are going to see it. You never know if one day your video is going to blow up. Like, you never know. And that's why a lot of people do these things. However, the online sleuthing that happened, a lot of it stemmed from Facebook and blogs, was problematic to say the least. And I say that because they pushed the boundaries between what was appropriate for online sleuths. They were very hostile to the police. They felt like because of the rise of the internet that they had a right to this information. And furthermore, they also made the information that is available about this case incredibly convoluted. Now, we know now if you're someone that does true crime research, or if you're someone that presents information in this way, you know that there are things that you can leave out. You know, if I talked about everything, every single little thing, I mean, just to give you a frame of reference, the Maura Missing podcast does that. And they had, I mean, over 100 episodes about this. Like, you can't sit and tell every single detail. But these online sleuths believed that every detail was of the utmost importance. And because of that, a lot of that filtered through into the information that we have now. And some of it just isn't important. Like, I'm not going to be talking about the YouTube guy, Dirtbag. If you are familiar with the case and you're familiar with Dirtbag 101 or whatever the hell his name was, I'm not even going to mention him because he's not someone that's important. Like, he just isn't important to the case. But back then, they just didn't care about that stuff. So while I believe that online sleuthing is not inherently bad or wrong, I have issues with the way it was done back then. We are also going to talk about James Renner. Wait, is my camera like not? James Renner. And he gets this whole segment because he's a perfect example of someone who, he's just an asshole. So I am going to talk about two more searches that were important. They're the only ones that I believe are worth talking about. There were some other searches that happened that were just completely unfruitful. But the first one was in October of 2006. And this goes along with an encounter that Fred had had in late 2004. And after Maura went missing, a man approached him and said he'd found this bloody, rusty knife in his brother's house. And he claimed that he believed that his brother had killed Maura. Now, he said that he was acting strange around the time of her disappearance. And on top of that, once his brother found out that the bloody knife had went missing, he scrapped all of his entire car for parts. Now, the family has come forward and said that all of this is a fabrication in order for the man to get the reward money. That's all he wanted. But nonetheless, this caused the police to search the house, or volunteers and police to search the house with tracking dogs. When the tracking dogs went into this house, there was a certain closet in the house where the dogs went absolutely bananas. They went berserk. So they obviously cut out sections of the carpet to send to the lab for further testing. Those lab results have never been made public, but no one has ever been arrested. So just remember that. But those lab results have never been made public. Another search took place as recently as April of 2019 in Woodsville, New Hampshire. It was a result of the Attorney General Jeffrey Switzel, or whatever his name is. Fred thought that this was going to be the big break in the case, or at least he conveyed that he thought this was going to be the big break. Unfortunately, they dug up the yard. I believe that they had like just put down a concrete patio, and they like dug that up, and nothing was found. Or at least nothing of substance was found. Now, we've talked about the situation of her disappearance. We've talked about the car crash. We've talked about all of that stuff. But I want to talk about her headspace before the accident, because a lot of things happened in the months and even years leading up to her accident that I think are important and could potentially lean someone to believe that it's possible that she may have killed herself or was trying to run away. Now, in her early life, Maura she had a lot of potential. She was a star track athlete, and she was accepted into West Point with a degree in chemical engineering. Her parents did divorce when she was 6 years old, but there's no substantial evidence that it caused any sort of residual trauma, but it definitely could have. But from what I understand, she still had a close relationship with her father. You'll notice I didn't talk about her mom in here at all. Like, I could not find any information about her mom. But it does seem as if the turning point of her life was at West Point. She went to West Point. Like I said, she was studying chemical engineering. And quickly after her freshman year, she transferred to UMass in Amherst, which is where she went missing. Now, she transferred herself, but she transferred because she was caught stealing from the commissary. She was stealing less than $5 worth of makeup, which may seem trivial, but the military has its own sort of honor code that is different from civilian life. So she was asked to transfer out. Everything after this shows signs that this triggered a downward spiral for her. And this isn't just me saying that, like, it really does seem to be a turning point. There's no real concrete information of anything prior to this. Like, this was a huge moment for her. So she transferred to UMass and she became a nursing student. And as far as I could tell, she was faring fairly well in her classes. It seemed like Maura was a very intelligent young girl. I want to give you an exact timeline for the days leading up to her disappearance after West Point, but I will say I got a lot of this information from the Missing Maura Murray podcast. They did a whole episode on the timeline, so again, I'm linking them down below. Please check them out. So when she transferred to UMass, she got herself into quite a few sticky situations. Now, the first one that I'm specifically going to talk about is December 3rd of 2003, just literally 3 months or whatever before she went missing. She was being investigated for credit card fraud. Now, she never went to court for this. It doesn't even look like she was officially arrested, but they did go to her dorm room, take her picture, and they had some sort of agreement. I don't know if it was a probation type thing, but she was told that for 6 months, as long as she didn't get into any more trouble, her record would be expunged. Now, the situation with the credit card fraud, she had used someone else's credit card in order to purchase a large amount of food. And she claimed that she got this credit card receipt out of the trash and used it that way. I don't know if that's how it works, Maura, but that's what she claims. The theories that stemmed from this were theories that Maura was bulimic. they stemmed from the fact that I guess they investigated and it wasn't like she had bought this food for like a party that people remember. She was seemingly eating this food by herself, and stealing credit card information in order to buy food isn't uncommon for someone that's bulimic. It's very possible that she could have maxed out her debit and credit cards and she needed money. She was hungry or whatever. And the reason that I lean more towards this is because she could have asked her family for money, but instead she chose to go that route. And I think it's because if she was bulimic, her family probably knew about it. From what I understand, her family did put a lot of pressure on her. So it wouldn't be surprising that she would go down that route in order to buy large amounts of food. Physically, there are photos of her showing her with very puffy cheeks, which is a telltale sign of bulimia, is when someone's incredibly thin and they have puffy cheeks. She also potentially had a drinking problem, and that could have led to the puffy cheeks, but it also is important to note that bulimia and other substance abuse issues go hand in hand. So she had this, she was already in trouble. She was told, as long as you don't get in trouble for 6 months, you'll be fine, but if not, you're going to jail. So on February 5th, 4 days before her disappearance, she got a phone call from someone. They think it's her sister. The only words that she uttered about this phone call were "my sister." Now, this phone call made her so upset that she had to be walked home by her supervisor. She was completely distraught over whatever happened on this phone call. The most interesting part about this was about a half an hour before she reported to work. She'd only been at work about 20 minutes when she got this phone call. A student at UMass named Petite Bassie had been hit by a car in a hit-and-run accident. He suffered such severe head trauma that he still to this day does not know who hit him, what kind of car it was, anything. To this day, he does not know. Thankfully, he survived, but there had been a large amount of hit and runs on UMass. I think it was about 3. But upon further investigation of Maura's car, she had sustained damage on the front end of her car that was not consistent with the accident that she had been in that day on Route 112. So there are theories that that phone call was related to Petite Bassie. More about that in a little bit, but that is a theory. Petite Bassie has never, I'm like scared. Petite Bassie has never said that it was Maura, and witnesses have never said it was Maura. But 3 days before she went missing, her father came to visit her at Amherst. Allegedly and ironically, Fred was in Amherst to buy Maura a car. All of a sudden, Maura was saying, I swear there's something flying in here. Am I crazy? She said that she was going around telling people that she needed a new car. Car was in really bad shape. So he withdrew around $4,000 to buy her a car. But they didn't end up buying a car that day. And in fact, no dealership has any record that they were out buying a car that day. Of course, it's possible that they could have went to like a private seller or something like that. But no dealerships have any record of them ever being there. Now, we haven't talked about the rag in the tailpipe, and I think the rag in the tailpipe is something that gets brought up a lot. There was a rag found in the tailpipe of Maura's car. Fred claims that he was telling her to put the rag in the tailpipe because it had been sputtering. But the thing with that is that the Maura Murray podcast had put kind of a thing out there saying like, hey, if you're a mechanic, can you please, like, what does this mean? A rag in the tailpipe, is this a thing? There is no evidence to support that any person would ever recommend a rag in the tailpipe. Now, with older cars, yes, but her car was about a 1980 or 1996, I believe. So it wasn't that old. It definitely was not old enough to have that kind of problem. So even with that, as bad off as her car was, her friends had no recollection of her car being broken down, her car being in the shop, Maura having car trouble. It just seemed like feeling of like we need to get a new car was not warranted for the situation. This is strange to me because I'm coming from someone that my car, I didn't have a bad car, but like my car did break down pretty frequently. And I went to school on a college campus. It was a commuter campus, but a lot of people either didn't have cars or like didn't have money for gas. So we were constantly switching rides with people that did have cars. And you remember, like, if one of your friends, like, had a really crappy car, like, you remember, like, I remember all of my friends' cars. I remember the ones that broke down. I remember the ones that didn't. I remember the ones that were trashy. Excuse me. I remember the ones that were trash. So you remember these things, and they had no recollection of this. So after car shopping, Fred took Maura and one of her friends out to dinner. After dinner, they went to the liquor store. There are conflicting accounts of what happened at the liquor store. One account says that Fred stayed in the car while Maura and her friend were buying liquor, several different types. Other reports say that he was in the store with them and he was saying, "Come on, just pick something." This is interesting because he obviously knew that she would be drinking later that night, and yet he still allowed Maura to borrow his car. He said that his car, he didn't trust her car, so he allowed her to use his car to drive to a party that night. So the party was being held at a girl's house. Her name was Kate Markopoulos. She's come under fire for some things. You can do research on that on your own. I don't get it, but she's come under fire as well. Everyone in this case has come under fire, okay? Okay, so at around 3 a.m., she abruptly was like, "I've got to go. I've got to return my dad's car." And people were like, you can give it back to him in the morning. He's staying at a hotel. Maura and the friend had dropped him off at the hotel before the party because Wayworth and Amherst were about 2 hours away. So he was staying at a hotel for the night. She was like, no, she's adamant, I have to get his car back. Some reports say that she left with a guy, but these have been unsubstantiated. I do know that no one knows what happened after she left. No one knows what happened after she dropped the car off. No one knows what they talked about. No one knows if she stayed. I believe she stayed in the hotel with him as opposed to going back to the dorm, but no one knows. All of this evidence put together is quite alarming. I don't want to talk about theories yet. Was that you, Steven? I'm like spooking myself. I'm home alone. But all of this evidence just put together is alarming, and I'll talk about it more later because I don't want to get into it just yet. On top of everything else that was going on in her life, there's also evidence that she was having issues with her relationship with Bill Rausch. It's said that they were not getting along, that they were on the verge of a breakup, but there's also a theory that she was pregnant. I'm only mentioning this because of a theory that will come later, but there was a theory that she could have been pregnant. And if she was, Bill would have had one of two reactions, both of them being angry. So with all of this going on February 9th, she packs her car full of everything that she would need. She calls up some resorts and hotels looking to see how to make a reservation. She withdraws cash from an ATM. And she sets off on Route 12, totals her car, and she's never seen again. This is all that's known about her. This is all that is known about the days leading up to her disappearance. Everything else that I'm going to talk about from here on out is strictly theory because everything else was kind of theory with some facts mixed in. Everything else that I'm going to talk about up from this point is strictly theories. I will talk about my favorite theory. Stay tuned for that. However, I can't get into theories without talking about James Renner. The Missing Maura Murray podcast does not shit on James Renner the way that I'm going to, okay? They don't. They seem to respect him, have some semblance of respect for him. I do not. I think the way that he inserted himself into the investigation was gross. He's a literal psychopath. He tells you that within the first 3 pages of his book called True Crime Addict, about the Maura Murray investigation. He had just lost his job. He was looking for a new job, and he decided to do some research about Maura Murray and make that his full-time job. I just feel like when he was doing research about Maura, he had nothing new to add. He continuously blames Fred for everything. Everything and anything he blames Fred for. He's one of those true crime sleuths that I was talking about that like has blinders on. He has one theory and he will make everything fit that theory, and it does not matter what anyone else says. That's the theory. That's correct. That's what's correct. So that's why I don't like James Renner. But it's important to note that he firmly believes that Fred knows more than he's letting on, that Fred has something to do with it, that possibly Fred killed her. I don't know. But he's known for harassing witnesses, harassing police. He's known for going into places he does not belong. Unlike Fred, who like stumbled onto private property, James was going like right up on the doorstep and being like, talk to me, and harassing people until he got what he wanted. So I'm not a big fan of James Renner, but I had to talk about him because everything ends up leading back to James Renner because he did compile a lot of information. I tried to read his book for this and I couldn't do it. So in my opinion, if you want good information about this case, check out the Maura Murray Missing podcast. One person that I cannot neglect talking about as well is Bill Rausch. There's been a lot of alarming information that has come out about Bill Rausch. In the past few years specifically, his ex-girlfriend just won a civil suit against him. She claimed that she endured years of abuse, including an incident where he choked her and called her Maura. Now, this isn't the worst of it, so if you are triggered by domestic violence, if you're a victim of domestic violence yourself, please skip this if you don't want to hear it. I don't want anyone to be upset about this information because it's so alarming, but I think it's important to talk about. The worst thing that I've heard about him was with this woman, and this actually really upsets me. I don't know why, it's just really upsetting. He physically threw her up in the air into a light and hurt her so bad that he had to call an ambulance. And when he called the ambulance, he refused to leave. He refused to allow her to speak. He told the doctor he was the emergency contact and he was the one that needed to know what was going on. And she tried to break up with him, but he harassed her to the point that she had to file a restraining order against him. The tragedy of that incident where he threw her into the light was that happened on February 4th of 2018. Now you're probably, February 14th. Now you're probably thinking, oh, that's Valentine's Day. How sad. It's also 5 days after the anniversary of Maura Murray going missing. So think on that a little bit. She not only won this suit, but other women came forward and claimed that when the Oxygen documentary came out about Maura Murray, he actually called his staff into a meeting specifically to say that everything from this documentary that they were saying about him was untrue. So he was very upset about the documentary. And it seems to me that his character, a lot has been said about his character now. Years later, and I think the information about him is it's absolutely alarming. None of this looks good for him. Now, I'm not saying that I think he killed her. I'll get into it a little bit because now we're into the theories. I've talked about all the people I need to talk about. You know about Fred, you know about James, you know about Bill, you know about Maura, you know about everyone you need to know, you know about the situation, you know about the background. So let's get into the theories. Finally, Allie, you've taken 10 years, okay? Now, the first theory and most prominent theory is that she was murdered. I don't know if it would have been physically possible for her to be murdered, especially by Bill. And I don't think that if she was murdered, I personally don't believe that it was a pre-planned murder. I don't think there was a hit out on her. One possibility is that she was attempting to run away. I personally think that if she was, well, I'm gonna talk about my theory last, okay? But if she was running away from something, it is possible that she hitchhiked or trusted the wrong person and it was simply a crime of opportunity. I want people to remember that Ted Bundy was a serial killer that used opportunity to kill people. He didn't pre-plan a lot of his murders. He kind of just went out and was like, I'm gonna kill somebody, and like killed them. he didn't, he looked for people like Maura that would have been walking down a dark street by herself. Now, it is also possible that she was running away and Bill figured out that she was still alive and he's put a hit out on her. He has a military history. He's been deployed several times. It's possible that he had a contact that he could have called and he put a hit out on her and killed her. Or it's possible that he had already done that, had been threatening to kill her, and then she ran away and it made things worse. So, it's not my favorite theory. I think there's a lot of stuff that doesn't add up. I don't think it makes sense for her to have lived off the grid for so long, only to be found by Bill later. I also find it hard to believe that if she was killed by someone that we haven't found her body yet. But I mean, there's lots of people that we haven't found their bodies yet. So I literally have goosebumps. I feel like there's someone in my house. And also, when Maura first went missing, Bill did not have the type of power that he has now. He's like a powerful person in DC now, but he wasn't back then, and I don't think he came from money. So it doesn't seem very plausible to me that he could orchestrate this big thing back then. There's a lot of theories that involve Fred. I'm going to talk about my theory now, which is my favorite theory. My theory is that Fred saw Maura going down a very alarming path. He saw these things that were happening to her and he was concerned. I think she was expressing that she wanted to get away, and I think Fred wanted to help her and he had the ability to help her. So I think when he went to visit her that day for the car, and they withdrew $4,000 from the bank, I think that money was for her to start a new life. I personally even think down to the car accident. I think the car accident was orchestrated because when you do research about that day, she was going about 25 miles an hour. She wasn't speeding down the road. Didn't seem like she lost control of the car. There was no ice. The road wasn't wet. It seemed like what she was trying to do was total the car so that the evidence of what happened with Petite Bassie could go away. I really think that's what she was trying to do. And I think she was trying to make it seem like it was something other than what it was. Or it's possible that things happened so fast that she left a lot of things behind. That I also think it's possible that she was trying to escape from Bill. I personally believe that Bill was an abuser. Abusers don't just become abusive overnight. They're abusive forever. And I believe that he abused Maura, and I think she was trying to escape and she didn't know how, and I think that maybe Fred didn't know how. And so I think that maybe he was trying to help her escape from that. And my hope is that she's still alive. I know people think that that's a pipe dream. I know there's a lot of people that don't agree with this theory, but I honestly think that she's still alive. I think that she's out there somewhere and that her dad did what he could. I don't think he knows where she is. I don't think he's hiding anything. I think he's using plausible deniability. But I do think that she's alive somewhere, or was alive at least. So that's my theory. And I think it does seem to me that it seems very deliberate that her cell phone was not used, but yet it was possible that she called Bill from a Red Cross phone. So I think the fact that her credit cards, debit cards, and her phone not being used, I think that was deliberate. I don't think that was an accident. So James Renner sees this a lot differently than I do. I don't see it being malicious. And I also think maybe it's possible that Fred has been so involved with the search in the fear that something did happen. You know, if he doesn't know where she went after, if he wanted to be able to deny all of this, it is possible that he really doesn't know where she is. And so when he was doing all these searches, he was looking for clues along the way to make sure that she was safe. And I don't think that that's bad. I mean, like, it's illegal, it's a crime, but I don't see it the same way that a lot of people do. I see a father who cared about his daughter enough to help her get away, if that's the case. So again, that's how I feel. That's in my opinion the theory that resonates with me the most. There's also the theory that she was running away and she died in the forest. She succumbed to the elements. That's super common. And that's definitely possible that she did. And if that's the case, then animals could have scattered her remains and, you know, she wouldn't have been found. So there's definitely holes in this theory. I understand that, but I just wanted to mention it. There's the most common theory is that she went into the forest to kill herself. There's theories that she deliberately went there to kill herself, but there's also theories that she was on her way to a hotel to kill herself. She got into this car accident and she was like, well, that's it. Like, that's it. That's it for me. I'm just going to have to do it now. So it's possible that she felt hopeless. She was getting ready to get a DUI. She'd been drinking. So she was like, I have to do it now. And she got away and she wanted it to be on her own terms. And so she left and she killed herself. I struggle with this because I feel like she would have had to go extremely deep into the woods. However, there is a theory out there that she purposefully went deep into the woods in order to succumb to the elements. I just think that that's like a horrible way to kill yourself. And I also think that at some point your mind, you wouldn't be able to rationalize that anymore. Your body, I think at a certain point, doesn't your body like go against your mind and it's like, I want to live? Am I crazy? Is that a thing? The other thing is that she had brought her like textbooks and stuff with her that didn't indicate a mindset of like, I'm gonna kill myself. To me, that indicates a mindset of like, I just need some peace. Oh my God, I can't breathe. I need some peace and quiet. Like, I'm tired. I need to study. I'm burnt out. Let me go into the mountains, get a hotel room, study for the weekend. And when she told her professor she was leaving, she said she would be back. They always say that the simplest answer is probably the correct one. And that's what a lot of people think happened, is that she got into a car accident. She was already feeling hopeless. She was scared and she went into the forest to kill herself. Or she ran and that she got too deep in the forest. She tried to call her dad, and couldn't get a hold of anyone because there was no cell reception and succumbed to the elements that way. That is probably the most plausible one. There's also a theory that when they were orchestrating the runaway, that there was a car behind her like following her and ended up picking her up and taking her to another location. This is also possible, especially since the cadaver dogs or the tracking dogs like lost her scent, and they did say it seemed like she could have gotten into a car. That's all the theories I have. That's it. That's everything that I could find about Maura Murray. I know this video is long. I'm getting ready to lose my voice. So, are you depressed? I'm depressed. Oh! Holy shit. I forgot to talk about something. So, there is actually a little bit of evidence to support the fact that she could still be alive. I will link the blog post down below because it's never been unconfirmed. Like, it's never been denied. There was video footage that came out a few years ago of a woman that people were like, this looks exactly like Maura Murray. And if you put the pictures side by side with what, you know, Maura Murray would look like now, it's shockingly similar. And this woman has a daughter. Now, a lot of people have said, why would she go out in public when she knows that there's going to be cameras or the possibility of cameras? I hear ya, but after this long, maybe she feels like she has a sense of safety. Now, I will say the police have not confirmed that this is a confirmed sighting of her, but I do find it very interesting. And I'll link that. I'll put the pictures up if I can, because that was really exciting for me, because I looked at it and I was like, that looks like Maura. And I know a lot of other people felt that way too. So That's it. I know I was looking over there a lot. I'm telling you, my battery's low, it's gonna die. So anyway, make sure you like and subscribe. If you want more of this type of content, just comment down below what you want me to do some research on. I was gonna do JonBenet Ramsey, but it was too depressing. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm gonna do next. But that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one, okay? Stay weird.